Hi, I'm Mahuli Ganguly, and this is my APA research presentation for the Research in Method Psychology class at PCC. So today we are going to be talking about computer anxiety. So the reason why I chose this experiment specifically was my interest in how people feel about computers, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic. People have been shifting their lives basically into using computers as a means of communication with other people. And so if you're a student, for example, instead of a live learning classroom, you are now in front of a screen hearing lectures from your teacher and listening to discussions with your peers. And not even just students, employees in regular workforces are using applications such as Zoom in order to continue their meetings as the pandemic raged in the past. And so that's why I wanted to focus on how people feel about computers, especially in a post-COVID world. And so yeah, that's just an understanding of people's attitudes towards computers. This experiment specifically identified three demographics: a person's age, their gender, and their ethnicity. Then the survey went into how the person viewed themselves in the form of characteristics from one of the big five personality traits, which was openness. And then it looked into the computer anxiety scale. Into the computer anxiety, it used a scale of 1 to 5 to see how they felt about computers. And then and the last part was a collection of their personal thoughts regarding the incorporation of computers in their lives. So the hypothesis for this experiment is that if a person has an open mind and they're willing to learn new concepts, then they're more likely to be comfortable with computers. And if they're not comfortable with computers, they're more willing to learn about them. Moving on to the methods. This experiment had a total of 11 participants, 6 of which were female, and the other 5 were male. The participants all were over the age of 18, with the range of age was 70. The average was 45, and the standard deviation of this was 23.1. Participants were recruited at a local event that I had attended, and I asked for if they would be willing to take this test, this survey. So the first variable that this experiment analyzed was the one of the big personality traits, as I had said, openness. Openness is the willingness to be able to learn about new concepts and new things, and to not only learn, but also kind of shift away from a routine and look into other means of like just changing certain aspects of your life, and not only that, just your openness towards that. And so the questionnaire had asked participants how much they agree or disagree with certain characteristics regarding their feelings towards being open. And so, for example, one of the questions would be, I see myself as someone who is original and comes up with new ideas. The person would then choose whether they agree with the statement or they strongly disagree with the statement. The second variable that was chosen was from an inventory from catalog test, which basically had a series of questions regarding computer anxiety. So it collected information about how a person felt about using computers in their lives, learning new things about computers, and so on. And so it used different scenarios to get a grasp of how that person felt towards computers. For example, one of the questions would be, I look forward to using a computer in my job. So a person would say, oh, I agree with that. I would be comfortable using a computer for my job, or they would strongly disagree with that statement. So what my results had shown was that people who were showed to be open in the first portion of the survey, people who scored above a 4, so either a 4 or 5 in their rating, they they were more open towards certain ideologies. So they agreed with statements regarding computer fluency, and not even that. Statements regarding wanting to learn about computers. For example, one of the questions was whether a person would be likely to learn a new computer coding language. So based on that, if you had chosen 4 or 5, then most likely from your openness, you had chosen a 4 or 5 for a question regarding your willingness to learn about new concepts and ideas. The demographic testing was actually very interesting, and also showed that people who are in the 60 plus age group were more hesitant about incorporating computers. And so it was not that they had seen computers as a threat, more that they believed that having computers in their lives were more of something that was kind of reversing them in a way where they would have to learn new things all over again. And so this was more put into detail in the qualitative data from the open questions. So people who were in a more elderly age group expressed their concerns about the changing times and how it's hard to keep up with the advancements of computers. However, in the open category, no one disagreed about the fact that computers are necessary for the advancement. So regardless of demographic or openness as a personality trait, everyone agreed that computers are necessary for advancement. And so those who selected, like I said before, a 4 or above, or a 2 or below on the reverse scoring, which meant that for some of the questions, it was the reverse of one question. So if, for example, someone had chosen a 1, you would reverse that scoring, and that would actually be a 5 to be compatible with all of the other questions. And so either way, anyone who scored above a 4 in the openness category would be a person who would probably be open. And then the same thing for the computer anxiety. And so, as I said before, my results showed that people who scored above a 4 did score above a 4 for the computer anxiety as well. So these results did confirm my hypothesis. These are my graphs that showed the different age groups and how they felt in the openness and the computer anxiety. So we can shed a light into, for example, let's move my space, into the 89-year-old category, or the 86, both of these. So they were kind of on the lower side, especially 89 for the openness scale. And the same thing happened here, where both of them are the lowest for the computer anxiety scale. The highest ones were 19-year-olds to 19 to 30s. This group of individuals were not anxious when using computers, while this group was anxious and was open. So for this experiment, the strengths of this experiment was that the platform that this was used on was user-friendly in a way, as the questions were concise and to the point. So most likely they were easy to understand and rate for the self-evaluation. And not only that, one of the most important things for the scientific method is that the experiment that you conduct is easily replicable, so that if you conduct a certain experiment, another scientist could read your methods and reconduct that experiment to confirm or deny your results. Another strength for this experiment was the high internal validity, which means that because this experiment was kind of more controlled, the results that I had received could be proven. Well, the results proved that there was a correlation in this population, so a correlation between openness and computer anxiety. A few weaknesses for this experiment was the participant recruitment. I wish I was able to get a more diverse and random participant in order to have a good representation of the actual general public. However, this was not possible, and so as a result, sample bias did play a role in this experiment. A few extraneous variables that, even though this was a controlled experiment, of course, there were still people were taking the survey on, for example, different modes such as an iPad, a phone, a tablet, or even a computer. And so that would not be possible to control on my end, since I am not the one who is giving the survey. It is done in their own time. And then also, even though the questions, as I had said, one of the strengths was they were to the point, sometimes interpretations can be different. And so, of course, that's something that is not controlled. Whether that's a weakness or a strength, I don't know, but I view it as a weakness because sometimes that can make the results different. And so for my my last discussion, for future research, I would have, of course, loved a bigger sample size. 11 people are not a good representation of the population. And I think this is a topic that really goes hand in hand with what society is dealing with right now after the pandemic. We're in a post-pandemic era where computers are always on our desks, and we're using them for almost everything, all aspects of our life. And so it's important to understand how different groups are affected by this, and the diversity of the population is very immense, and that's why a bigger sample size would be much more beneficial in solidifying these results. A more extensive self-evaluation would be would be better for the openness test. Not just having a few scenarios or a few questions regarding how a person is open. That would be, if I had more questions, that would be much better for that specific section. And another thing that would be kind of different from my experimental design, but would be a nice addition to for future research, is to have the survey that I did as a pre-test evaluation, so how a person feels about computers, and then to have some sort of conditioning, so teaching a person certain things like, oh, it's this easy to learn a computer language, it's this easy to incorporate them into our lives, and teaching them those types of things, and then taking a post-test and seeing if the conditioning had in any way changed the person's anxiety levels when it came to computers. So by saying, well, for example, pressing one key, this was a question on the survey, pressing one key would not erase all of your data. And by explaining the methods behind the computer, maybe that will take the anxiety levels at ease a little bit. So that was my experiment. And yeah, thank you so much. I've closed this.